only 10% of companies are actually succeeding with AI. 30% of CDOs are actually able to demonstrate value. And I think that that's scary, right? You need that strategic patience from the board. There was a business in the US that was very proud about saying, oh, we removed 100 of our employees and replaced with AI. Is that part of your values?
Yeah.
Is that the reputation you want to have? Is that the kind of message you want to send out there? What does it mean then to attract talent?
How are you, Joe?
Hi Margot, thank you. Yeah, I'm great, doing great. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here.
You're welcome. You have a very interesting career path, very diverse experience. Can you tell us a bit more about your background, the different steps of your career?
Absolutely, sure. Well, first, I'm a business profile, right? I come from a business background, functional background, so I'm not technical at all. So sorry to disappoint your technical listeners. But yeah, and I'm a digital transformation background. Basically, I started off now 13 years ago. Makes you feel old. In consulting, in e-commerce strategy and omni-channel strategies. So helping businesses go from brick and mortar to online and integrating the channels. And then, so that was the strategy part. Then I moved to more management consulting, program management, digital transformation, so more implementation. And when I moved to Chalhoub and the Middle East, so that was back in France, and I went more agency side, so digital marketing, strategy around launching businesses online, social media, project management, e-commerce websites. So that was more on the digital marketing side. And then with Chalhoub, I was 7 years at Chalhoub. I started in product management, experience as well, omni-channel experience. So I got more of the experience and product management side of things. And finally, basically, we've covered kind of the 4 digital business transformation aspects. The last one that was missing, and which came quite naturally as a kind of byproduct of all that digital experience, is the data. And at the end of 2019, Chalhoub recruited their first CDO and decided, as part of the digital transformation, actually, a strategy, to launch a data office. So they recruited the CDO, and then they kicked off to have a formal data platform, big data, to enable analytics at scale and so on. So I was one of the founding members of that team. So that's just kind of organically, I did the jump from digital and omnichannel to the data side. And I think that's kind of how the world kind of evolved as well. And the ecosystem with the boom of digital kind of created all those data touch points and data points, which then called for doing that leap into data. So I kind of followed the same way. And in the data team, I was in charge of data products. So we had a data, we approached data in a agile, iterative, modular, product-based approach. So I was leading the whole portfolio, product strategy, overseeing delivery. And then with time, my role grew as well. Went more into governance, had a small, lightweight governance role, overseeing that, and analytics as well. So we kind of created a small center of excellence, let's say, in the data team. So more analytics side.
And now back to consulting.
And now back to consulting, yeah. That's how I started, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of missed it with time. And I think there's just a great opportunity right now with everything going on, with the boom of AI and data being such an exciting and dynamic space. So maybe take that experience, having lived it on the client side. And I loved my experience at Chalhoub, and shout out to everyone there who might be listening. But I think it was time to go back to client servicing and consulting, advising and taking that experience and sharing it and putting to the service of other groups who also looking to take on that ambitious data roadmap.
I would like to deep dive a bit in your experience at Chalhoub, because I think what is very interesting is that you really saw the organization growing. I mean, everything around data. You said you were part of the founding members. You saw like the recruitment of the CDO, etc. And you know that one of the very trendy question is about, should I hire a CDO? Where, when, at which stage of the maturity? So I would like to discuss this with you, the CDO role, if you don't mind. So what is a CDO for you, or in your experience? And we will deep dive into how it has evolved in time.
Yeah, I think that the role of the CEO, I think that's kind of a tricky question. And we've seen, I mean, I think so far there was, I mean, the answers keep changing. Right? I mean, there was never, no one has the absolute truth. You can't open a dictionary and just see, well, that's the role of the CDO. And it evolves so much. And I personally had the chance as a director of data products to sometimes step in the shoes of the CDO.
Yeah.
For one, I replaced the CDO, Tim Carmichael at the time. And again, shout out
Hi,
to
Tim.
him if he's listening. Hi, Tim. For a few months, so I stepped in his shoes, and it was pretty nice challenge. And then in the interim as well, I was acting CDO. The job market, I think the CDO in the past 20 years is one of the most difficult and complex roles. Plus, it changed so much. You know, it still hasn't commoditized. It still hasn't, just set. It hasn't settled yet. So it changed so much. And there's so many aspects you want to look at when you define what's the role of a CDO. Honestly, it's hard to say there is one definition. I think, and I'll give you the consulting answer. It depends. Right?
Love it.
It depends on those criteria.
Yeah.
It depends on the personality. It depends what you're looking for. It depends as an organization. It depends on your strategy. Where are you as an organization in your data maturity and your data journey? So, and that will call for different types of CDOs. What's your strategy as well? Do you have the right people? So therefore, the right role and the right person behind the role, behind the CDO, to reach that vision and the value. To help me, maybe we can put down like a framework around it. I look at personas and archetypes. I create archetypes. So I say, a CDO could be a strategist, for example. So looking at data and findings and insights and answering hard questions. That could be one of the facets. Is he a transformer or a democratizer? Are they a democratizer and transformers? So do they help in transforming the organization, putting data in the hands of everyone, and so on? So kind of working a lot on literacy and change management. A technologist, are CDOs quite focused on technology, on building platforms and so on? Are they a protector? Governance, security, policies, privacy, which is now critical. So, and then each organization, after defining those different archetypes or personality facets, can then adjust the cursor as needed for their journey, for their needs. But overall, I think the role is not set in stone, definitely, and it's still unfortunate that we see often organizations that say, "I need a CDO. I need to do data."
Yeah.
Okay, what is it that you need to do? Not very clear, but they need to do data because they recognize that the whole market's moving, and then I need therefore a CDO, and they start with a CDO. But I mean, for what, right?
Yeah.
What resources are they managing? What people? What budget? Do you have a plan? Do you have a vision for them? Are you setting them up to succeed as well, right? And I think these are what's really critical is that if you're going to recruit, before defining necessarily the role, define everything that's around it, the strategy, and how you're going to empower them, and how are you going to set them up to succeed. And then the rest, I think, will come, and starting small and building.
Yeah, I think it's the reason why I was asking is that I've seen many companies rushing into like actually recruiting CDOs or head of data, but they had no team, probably no budget, and as well, and I wanted to pick your brain on this, they were usually not really reporting directly to the CEO, so they were not like a part of the executive committee, which I think could be a bit of a mistake, because I don't know if you can really push the adoption of data and AI in a company if this doesn't really come from the top. So I don't know if it was the case at Chalhoub.
That's a very good point. I think you're totally right. You have to look at the whole value chain of data. Sometimes they scope the role too small. I heard once someone say, I need a CDO or a data leader or head of data so that they can sit with the business to understand their needs. But that's, I mean, or also to develop at the same time. I mean, that's maybe a data engineer or a business analyst role to do so. But at Chalhoub, I think thankfully they had the vision to really empower and have the CDO really reporting to a high instance higher committee, one of the highest committees, not sitting yet on the board. They're not there yet, but definitely with proper empowerment. And then when I say it's a complex role, I mean, if you think about it, the CDO needs to understand the business. They need to connect with the business, collaborate, not isolate.
Yeah.
They need to understand technology. They need to be able to derive insights and do analysis, understand policies and governance. It's so complex, you know. It's not an easy place to be in. And on top of that, you have all the confusion around the role and the expectations. So, I mean, it's an interesting place to be, but it's challenging.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And as well, I think there is this question of like, when we start working on data AI and we actually want to accelerate on this, where do we put this team, even if there is no CDO? Is it like close to, let's say, the marketing team, because usually most of the data can easily come from this side of the business, or should we put this team as part of the IT team? So what was your experience in this positioning?
Yeah, I mean,
there is no good answer, I know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, exactly. And I think same. It depends.
It depends.
The team. I mean, if you think of the data team as an objective party that is not owning the data, and I think this is also a critical part consideration. Confusion around the CDO owns the data and therefore owns as well the value. No, that's tricky. I don't. That shouldn't necessarily be the case, because you have functions that own the data. Should own the data, example, the marketing. So if you put the data team within a specific function, do you lose that 360 view of the business? Do you lose that objectivity as well? So if you think about data quality, for example, and governance, if the data team is kind of the police of data quality, and you put the data team under technology, wouldn't that also kind of take away of that objectivity? Because data quality has an aspect that is very functional, very close to the business, but data quality also is close to the systems and how the systems have been architected and set up. So putting it in either side, you will lose that neutrality and objectivity when it comes to data quality monitoring and assessment. There will be a bias. If you put the data team within a specific function, for example, marketing, aren't you then maybe not prioritizing the CEO's priorities, for example, and be focusing on one aspect of the business? Maybe that could make sense if your organization is very marketing focused. And again, as we say, depending on the journey and the maturity, you could start somewhere. For example, we've seen data teams being incubated in the strategy team, because strategy looks at the vision, strategy looks at value add questions and challenges to answer with data or with insights. So it could make sense. And also strategy kind of usually sits on the board or very close to the CEO as an intern or chief of staff of CEO, for example. So it gives that right exposure until you reach a critical mass. Because let's be honest, when you start with a team of 2 or 3, handling a few pilots here and there in the organization, it's going to be a bit harder to get the attention of your CEO. So if you report directly to the CEO, it's not there yet. You need to get some of that momentum going. You need to get some of the value proven as well. And then you start getting the attention of the board and so on. So it might be a very good opportunity or a good option to sit within a function that has that exposure to the board and to the senior management and decision makers, as well as that 360 view until you reach that critical mass. But what's talking about AI now, it kind of made what I just said a bit obsolete, in the sense that if you talk about pure data, a few years ago, it was hard to get the attention of the board and CEOs. Today, the CEOs want to talk about data because of what we've seen in the past 2 years with ChatGPT and the boom of Gen AI. Now CEOs are saying, no, I want to talk about data. Tell me about AI. I want to accelerate about AI on AI and so on and so on. So now CEOs have a great opportunity, I think, if they play it well, to get the ears and get the empowerment that they might have been lacking in the past. Yeah,
very interesting. Because I was, so as you said, like this role has evolved a lot. Like it started very small. We were talking BI. It was really not sexy, very difficult to get adoption from the people, but from the employees, but as well from the top level management. And now more recently, everyone gets I'm talking about this region, but like people get way more excited, so it's easier to get the attention of like the management. So how do you see it evolving? Because all the eyes are a bit on this type of role. I can see in this region since 2 years you have heads of data everywhere. A few years ago, like let's say 4 or 5 years ago, it was impossible to even find a job as a head of data here in the region compared to other regions. So now it's the boom of head of data. How do you think it's going to evolve?
Yeah, I think Gen AI is for data leaders what COVID was for digital leaders.
Yeah.
Those digital transformers. It's been that catalyst, right? It just propels the CDOs at the forefront of everything now. If you look at where CDOs have the opportunity to be today at the forefront versus where they were 20, 30 years. I mean, it's not a new role, the CDO, but it's not that old either. And it's been reinvented so many times. So if you think about the first generation, CDOs really were mainly around governance, security, making sure the data is secured and not really accessed or accessed in the proper ways, and the governance. Then it evolved with BI. Talked about, okay, we now have BI tools, ERPs, let's start getting analytics and dashboards out, and that's your job, CDOs. Then it evolved with big data, plus the cloud boom and the warehousing, digital, everything we spoke earlier. We started talking about, okay, the CDO role now is build a warehouse, build analytics, scale it, start talking about more of the, technology has become much more accessible. So the CDO role was a bit broader, but very focused on the cloud, data warehousing, analytics. And I think now, but still very technical, but now the CDO that are going to be, I think, successful, is that fourth or third generation, depending how you see it, is those that understand the business, understand how to communicate, how to get value out of the initiatives. So much more business oriented and transformational. Because what AI is bringing is not just another tool in your toolbox, but it's going to bring, I think, very deep transformation to organization in order to get the value out of it. And the CDOs will have a role to play in terms of innovation and transformation and business value. Without neglecting all the above, I think they will still have to understand even more than ever governance and privacy. They'll have to still be very familiar with the technologies out there and so on, because one of their key counterparts are going to be developers, engineers, potentially even IT and CTO. And analytics will never go away because you still got to derive insights. But then Gen AI and AI open the door to a whole new topic, which is that reinvention of businesses potentially as well. And they have a great role to play, I think, on the forefront.
And at Chalhoub, when you actually joined, like between the moment you joined and the moment the CDO was recruited, what really happened? Like, because you were one of the founding members of this transformation, if I may say. So how did you start? Did you start by building a strategy or running a full assessment, as we see sometimes? Or did you just start by building, innovating and testing and trying? Like, what was your strategy? Because it actually became one of the, I mean, from my point of view, one of the most advanced data team in the region. So, like, what was the journey?
We started at the end of 2019, literally December. I think we were 8. And then we had, so Ryan at the time, the CDO, had his vision, had a plan on where we wanted to be. He sold it very well as well. He got great buy-in from the management and the group. It was quite high level, but we knew more or less where we were heading. It gave us that North Star. And then January really hit the ground running. We got our first sponsor.
Yeah.
So that's critical, I think, for any new team that is built, especially in data, but any new team that is built, get your sponsor, get a high priority use case from them, and then deliver it as fast as you can, right? And that's I'm not even talking about AI here. I'm just talking a product in data. It could be in technology, it could be in anything, but in data, get a sponsor, get a high priority use case, and be agile enough to deliver it as fast as you can. Demonstrate the value fast, and that's what we've done. And we partnered with the COO at the time, or Chief Supply Chain Officer. And as you can imagine, supply chain is all about data, and he had very, very limited data, a lot of dark areas in his scope. So he came to us, told us, I need analytics for my supply chain. He gave us a bunch of frameworks and whatnot that we had, like 1,000 pages framework that we had to just digest and summarize. And we came back with an analytical framework. We prioritized with them. At the time, we had also a priority framework, always of value to, two axes kind of priority framework, value to feasibility or ease of implementation, even though at the time we had nothing. So I think ease of implementation was always very hard, but we tried to keep that relative and into perspective. And then we identified top use cases, and we built the platform use case by use case. And then 3 years down the line, we looked back and said, what was our strategy actually for the platform? We're like, we didn't really have one purely explicitly defined in a deck of 100 slides.
Yeah.
We actually built it as we go. And yes, it comes with risk, because you have a use case, you build, you have another use case, you build, and you keep building. If you don't have the proper people and a basic, I would say, blueprint or swim lanes of where you want to go, and on the technical and on the business side, you could easily fall into technical debt and accumulate technical debt with time. So you want to be careful of that always, and have from time to time in your sprints or in your development cycles a few weeks of cleanup and optimization. Or simply what we used to do as well, we blended the optimization within the next iteration of the product. So as I said at the beginning, we built products. We focused our development around data products. We had data product managers and owners on the business side and whatnot. So we made sure to remove as much as we could technical debt by embedding it into the next iteration of the V1, the V2, the V3s of the different products. And then 3 years down the line, we had a modular data platform that was built with, I would say, a good in-house team with good talent, good engineers, and was built as a team and as a platform. We built it iteratively with time. I think at the end of we started 8, let's say, at the beginning of 2020. Then COVID hit, right? So that kind of, we were able to be quite resilient, I think, and data more than ever had become even more critical. We managed, regardless of COVID and all the challenges that humanity faced in 2020, we were able to finish the year at around 20 people.
Oh, wow.
So from 8 to 20 in
2020?
In 2020. Yeah, 8 to 20. Right, 8 to 20 in 2020. So I think that was a good demonstration of value. And then from there on, we just kept iterating and adding new functions and new sponsors, and we had proven the value to the board, or more or less proven the value. I think there's always a question mark on the value.
Yes, we will come to that.
We will come to that later. Yeah.
So yeah, it basically use case driven approach, showing value very fast. That was the way you actually built it. Okay, perfect. One more question. So you were saying you built a sort of platform. So you started with supply chain. Then I believe you looked into other business lines. You really became a sort of like service centers for, like, how was it working with the business? The business was coming, asking you, like showing you challenges, and then you were assessing if it's doable or not, prioritizing between the business lines.
Yeah, exactly. We became kind of the in-house data consultancy or data service provider for the group, and the group is pretty big. It's hundreds of brands. It's thousands of employees, from fashion to beauty. So different problematics and different challenges, but we were catering for the whole group. Therefore, we had put in place a team of product managers that were kind of facing the business, partner with the business, collected the requirements. We built business cases, the business cases for every product. Then we plugged it into the prioritization framework, which then evolved every year because the maturity evolved. Yeah. And what was ease of implementation in 2020 very different from an ease of implementation in 2023. So we evolved that framework year over year, and then we sat down with the different functions, prioritize gather their initiatives very quickly, because you don't want to spend 3 months either gathering initiatives, but enough to get started, prioritize those, and then looked at the different use cases. Where do we start? We got alignment, we proposed as well, and then we took it into our roadmaps, and on a quarterly basis, we reviewed priorities with the business. And we released as fast as we can. So we had kind of a Kanban Scrum approach, kind of a hybrid. We looked at products. We had a team dedicated for releasing products. We had a team dedicated for releasing those ad hoc kind of requests that were, out of the blue, high priority, came out of nowhere, or small evolutions or feedback on products. So we had kind of two release trains going on. We were able, with the same amount of people in the team, to deliver even more. 20% more, I think, in 2023. So, and honestly, it was great to see the buy-in. It was great to see the collaboration as well. I mean, when we started, it was sometimes eye-watering to see the standing ovations and people clapping, because we removed all of that manual work and the manual pain that they had just by now clicking a button. They could see the figure, which took them weeks before, and painful weeks to do so. And then you see the tear in their eyes of joy. I think that's one of the best. I think the best recognition of value you can get, and gets you out of bed in the morning. And then now with time, the challenges evolve as well. What was a challenge before, today is a commodity, and now you're looking to the future. Look at the different tools, AI, and how can we leverage Gen AI to cater for this new family of challenges.
Yeah. So not all it's interesting because not all the companies are AI ready. I mean, I believe at Chalhoub you started early, so maybe the company is a bit more AI ready. You were saying you were seeing the maturity evolve in time. Were you tracking it? I mean, is it just something that you were seeing, or were you actually tracking the AI maturity a certain way? Or is it just that you were like, okay, we had X many products implemented, so we can say we're a bit more mature? I believe that I understood that at Chalhoub, actually, you were quite AI ready because you started earlier, but like in general, how can I measure the AI maturity, the AI readiness of a company? How do I know that like I can actually go and start implementing use cases more advanced, or should I always start by very simple, technical, simple use cases? Or what will be your view on this?
Yeah, I think I was reading a research paper, and it was saying only 10% of companies are actually succeeding with AI. That means like 90% is failing. I think no one really fails or succeeds. It really depends on. It's not black and white. I failed or it's not an exam, but still, it shows the very low percentage of actually getting value, maybe, or getting something out of AI. And because it's not black and white, it's more about the expectations. So if we rephrase it and we say only 10% of companies are actually meeting expectations with AI, then it kind of gets you to another question of how are we defining those expectations, and are we ready? Actually, or did we jump too fast into expecting too much? So you really got to balance. So what are we expecting out of AI? So that's kind of the value question. What do we want out of AI? Why are we? AI is not an end, right? AI is a mean, and people think, I want to do AI.
Yes,
I need
it's shiny, sexy. Let's go. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. I need 5 data scientists. That's not an objective, is it? Start by defining the expectation from a value standpoint, and then comes that can you actually chasing those value or those use cases? Are you ready to do so, right? Or not? Do you have the fundamentals in place? Do you have the right people, and so on? And when we look at what really makes the AI initiative fail, let's say, or not meet expectation. If we look at the top 3, it's misalignment with business values, right, and stakeholder. The second is the data itself, data quality and the fundamentals. And finally, it's the fast pace at which AI is moving and the iterative approach. So how do you go about it? So you've defined what to do, you have foundations, but are you actually implementing it at the right pace and the right speed and iteratively? So do you have a test and learn mindset? And this was also the big challenge for CDOs, the digital officers, to put in place this experimental mind. If we think about number 1, the alignments of business value, then it's about identifying the use cases, prioritizing them. I think we spoke a lot about the value identification, prioritizing the right use cases, and making sure that you've connected with the different business stakeholders. But even there, you have a lot of challenges because there's so many use cases. I think today businesses can easily, if they talk to all of their functions, get hundreds of use cases. But then how do you remove the noise and find really the gems? So you also need a proper framework. Number two, the readiness. We spoke about data, we spoke about the quality, the infrastructure. So you also need a framework there. And we've seen successful leaders in AI rely a lot on frameworks, and frameworks enable this acceleration and speed of implementation. So how do you look at your readiness? What are the components and the building blocks that make you ready? And how do you go about it? Do you look at all the organization and all of the building blocks, and you spend months of doing audits and then getting a score and then having a result, an audit, an assessment of saying, okay, now this is your roadmap, now go and fix it.
Yeah.
You spend another month. So you've lost maybe 6 to 9 months of just trying to be ready. So how do you approach that as well, that readiness? And then finally, how do you implement? I think this is where it comes in. So how can you be agile? And I'm a strong believer in agile. So building your strategy in agile, not only developing your products or your projects and your initiatives in agile, but also building your strategy using agile. So having maybe the sprints will be quarterly and whatnot, but definitely you need to iterate, test and learn, and try and release fast. Because I think what we're gonna see with AI and to organization to really be successful or meet expectations is speed of implementation. So time to value. So if there's no value, forget about it. And if you have value, it's time to value. You wanna get it as fast as possible. An iterative approach, similar to what I was telling you earlier about our experience at Chalhoub. When we started with just doing data and analytics, wasn't even AI yet. It was what made us successful in a very short period of time is that iterative approach of test and learn and taking business users by the hand. And we got to be humble. I think everyone needs to be humble and saying, we've never done this before. We don't know. There's something you know, there's something I know, but there's something we both don't know. So we're going to have to work together, and we're going to have to iterate. We're going to have to work in agile for transparency, for communication. You're going to have to come to my meetings. You're going to have to attend those stand-ups. You're going to have to understand the challenges we're facing. And we're going to have to understand the challenges you're facing in your business day to day, and try to find that middle ground of, this is where we should start and this is where we should focus.
Thank you for sharing these three items. If we start by the first one, the business value. At the beginning of the discussion, you were mentioning that like when you started, the approach you were having was like, basically like building a matrix that was like impact and easiness to implement. But I guess it's a bit more complex than that, because you can have a lot of like easy to implement with hard value. Or how, like, do you have what is the type of framework you were using or you recommend using to make sure that you focus on the right bucket of value?
I'll start again with a fact. I think around only 30% of CDOs, again, research, not me, I think it was a McKinsey paper or BCG. They mentioned around 30% of CDOs are actually able to demonstrate value. And I think that's scary, right? It's scary because with everything going on, plus we're talking about the role of the CDO and the evolution and the investments that are going on. If only 30%, I mean, it's not as high. It's not really high. And expectations are through the roof. Let's be honest. I think in the Gartner technology hype cycle, Gen AI is now, I think they've passed the hype, and they're on the edge of falling into the disillusion, valley of disillusion, where basically they're like, you know what? It was great, the hype, but I'm not seeing any value out of it. So thank you, but I want to start. We've invested. I think a lot of companies have seen it and jumped on the train, but now they're going to expect results. So the value conversation is critical, and how you get to the value or demonstrating the value is going to be even more critical. So let's say you've identified use cases that are high value, great, but then how do you actually demonstrate that? And the expectation of seeing direct impact on your P&L, as where business leaders are, this is where they go to for and at the end of the day for value generation, is going to be very challenging. Is it the right way of looking at it as well? Should we look at the value from AI only on the P&L? It's much more complex. We spoke earlier that it's going to be transformative. How do you put transformation on the P&L? The impact of transformation on the P&L. So you want to definitely put a framework down. That's the first step. So how do you assess your use cases to get rid of the noise? So you might want to look at there was one critical aspect we looked at was the space to play, because that's undeniable. If you're tackling a supply chain problematic, right, the challenge around inventory, and you're saying, okay, I have hundreds of millions of dollars of inventory, and within that space, so I'm playing in the inventory space, I'm going to tackle a certain KPI or challenge around, I don't know, days of cover. You're going to go from 12 months of days of cover to the best practice of 6. So there's 6 months of days of cover of your inventory. How much is that in millions of dollars as well? And that's technically your space to play. And then whatever initiative that is AI or whatever that you're releasing, you enable the business at the end. So we go back to that partnership and creating the bridges with the business, because you're enabling the business to move the needle in that space to play. So we call it space to play. And that's, I think, great starting point. So how much is that space to play? And then when you finished your business case, you want to make sure you have that contract with the business, like a blood pact, to say, I'm going to deliver this because we agreed together with you that this is huge value for you. But then you will need to act on it as well, and we'll help you, we'll train you, we'll do what we can from our point, but you're the experts here. And then you want to get that commitment from the business. But even there, are those actions going to generate value immediately? Are you going to immediately? Sometimes the cycle of value is 12 months, 6 months. So again, you need that strategic patience from the board. But you need to be able to tell that story. So going back to the role of the CDO, making it even more I'm going to be a storyteller now, being able to convey that message. But if they get the right empowerment and the right message with their counterparts in the business, they can together go and build a proper case of saying, we've invested X, yes, in data, we've built those products, and now the business can take better decisions when it comes to buying or liquidations and whatnot. And we can expect the horizon of value to be X months or weeks, and sometimes maybe days.
Yeah. And so how do you actually tell the story to the business? So not to the, I'm not talking about the top management here. I'm not talking about the role of the CDO, but more like from the moment the business share a challenge, then you actually start with this as the idea and you want to develop it, industrialize it, scale it. What is the process and how do you make sure the business, because they will be the user, remain involved and participate as well to the evolution of the product? Because you were saying you don't want to build a product that is just a one-off product. You want it to evolve properly. The processes are going to change, etc., etc. You want it to evolve properly. How do you make sure from the beginning to the end and the evolution that the business is involved the right way?
Yeah, there's agile, agile methodology, which relies on transparency and partnerships. There's and it's great for iteration, and it's great for test and learn. And you really want to partner with the business, get them on board from day one. So from the design, from the requirements and so on. And then you want to move fast. Because you want to move fast. That means what? You want to make sure you have a prototype as fast as possible. So you validate the technology with that. Then you want to prove the concept, or even prove the prototype is kind of the proof of the concepts. But then you want to prove the value. And this is where you get your business in as well. You say, first iteration, it's feasible technically, and we have something that could be the output. You know, it's black and white, it's black and gray, or white and gray. Doesn't look very nice, but basically you'll get this at the end. Does that work? Approved by the business. Then the next step, you take it up one notch, you prove the value. But this is where you need the business to be with you, experimenting and trying. If that works, then you've proven the value with your business stakeholder. There's no way back, right? And here, the key message here is they're with you along the way, and you got to keep them excited. You got to keep them motivated and walking with you throughout the whole journey. After you've proven the value, you got to scale the value. And this is where there's the whole change management aspect that comes in. And again, is that the role of the CDO? Question mark. Is that the role of the functional leader? Question mark. How do they split it? You know. So once you scale, it's a different ballgame than when you have a first set of pioneer champions and ambassadors that you use for your pilot. Very different than when you scale. So you'll face new challenges when it comes to scaling those initiatives and scaling the value. And then finally, you gotta monitor it, and you want to sustain that value. Make sure it's embedded. And this is where the iterative approach starts, right? It starts from day one. When you say it's a pilot, then it's a proof of value, then it's a ready to scale product, and then even within the product, it becomes more of a mature product. But then you also have here different KPIs of success, but you also iterate, and you continue to iterate with your partners. And the iteration cycles could be longer, could be shorter, it depends, right? But that process allows for transparency, allows for partnerships, share of accountability, and you face you face together the changing environment that you might face on the technology level, and as a business to the market around them, the changing market around them.
So it's all about adoption, right? And it's all about people at the end. But we talk AI products, we talk about people. Sometimes for other type of leaders, both do not go together. I understand it's not your case. So what do you answer when people basically explain that because they have implemented amazing AI product, they were able to fire that, the value, if I may say, was okay, it replaced some people. So I implemented this amazing AI product, so I fired 5, 6, 7 analysts. Whoa, Victor, I understand this is not really your point of view. Can you tell us a bit what you think about this? Is it really the value we should expect from AI? I hope not, but what's your point of view on this?
Yeah, I think
I gave you mine.
Yeah, let's look a little bit at those AI initiative where we took the human out of the. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Okay, everyone talks about that, Tesla and so on. Apple divested from their autonomous vehicle project because it was just, not needing value for them right now. And has it scaled? I mean, yes, we hear about it, but there's a few thousand vehicles, maybe somewhere in California, but at the scale of the US and the world, it's nothing, right? So I don't think we can find that many AI initiatives that are completely autonomous without a human. So déjà, that's one.
Yeah, that's
looking at the big picture. If we take it into an organization, especially in the past months, let's say 23, 24, there's been a lot of those efficiency drives, right? Cost cutting or downsizing, removing, leaning out organizations and so on. And of course, it's usually the people who pay the cost for that.
Yeah.
So today businesses are running more and more on skeleton teams. So that means what? Multi-hatted teams with multi-tasks. That if you've automated some of those tasks, does that mean you can remove the person entirely from your organization? But what about the other tasks? So it's not that easy. It's not that straightforward. Second, from a reputational standpoint, right? I think there was a business in the US that was very proud about saying, oh, we removed 100 of our employees and replaced with AI. Is that part of your values?
Yeah.
Is that the reputation you want to have? Is that the kind of message you want to send out there? What does it mean then to attract talent? Right? There's another battle when we talk about AI. It's on the people. You want to attract the best talent. You want to attract the best people, retain them, grow them, and so on. What kind of message you're sending when you're saying, I removed X number of people and you're proud about it thanks to AI? AI is here to augment the workforce. It's here to improve, and you cannot remove the human from the loop totally. There will be some activities, yes, but these are some of the activities or a subsection of what the total activity is of a person, so that they can focus on higher added value. But because it's easier to see value on the P&L, you remove 100 employees, you can show the savings on the P&L, black on white. That's the easy way of seeing value for AI. But where the real value stands is on this aspect of transforming, augmenting the workforce, changing, even revising your processes. Because what's the value of taking an old, obsolete process and just putting on top of it AI. No, it's an opportunity to revise the full process and see how can AI change it. So we go back to transformation.
Yeah.
And you need to transform your business fundamentally. And this takes time to show value. It's not going to be easy. And businesses need to have that patience of being able to understand that the value is still unrealized, but it's there and it's going to grow. And if you capture it. So everyone wants to jump on the AI train, but they got to be careful on what to expect from the AI and how to get there.
But then how should the organization be ready and to this, and how should they evolve and adapt? Because we understand that like AI can impact so many sides of jobs, of all jobs, first of all, and very different sides of the job. So like you can't have a very like straightforward career path anymore. You can't like come in a company and say, okay, I know where I'm going to be in 10, 20, 30 years. It goes too fast. So there is a challenge for the employee, obviously, but then for the company as well. Like, how can I retain these talents, make sure they grow the right way? How can I offer the right opportunities? How can I, you were saying, how can I augment my employees? Like, what would you recommend to a company how can we be ready for this?
Yeah, it's not an easy question. I think the talent question has been there for years, and it started with digital, and then data, and now with AI, and change is the only constant, as they say, right? So organizations need to rethink. There's definitely looking at who do you already have in your organization, right? How can you upskill them? It's always been the case. You got to start looking inside. Because always recruiting from outside, you lose that experience of your business, the knowledge of your business, and that's actually worth a lot more. Employees who know your business, that's unique. It's harder to find. You don't find that in every corner, right? But these are people you've nurtured and so on. So you got to make sure you first start with your people in-house and put them on different pathways of training and upskillings and whatnot. You want to make sure they can grow. You want to work on the culture. You want to work on the experimentation as well. So how can you make your organization more agile, more open to test and learn, setting proper KPIs now that you have, because if you're in AI, I really hope you also have proper intelligence, analytics, and insights, so you actually know, you have the indicators to see where you want to move the needle the most. So you can put in place this measure, analyze, act, and then recommend kind of loop as well, which goes in hand with the approach of iterating. But it's always going to be a challenge, but it starts from the top, I think, as well. The culture comes from the top. If you look at who's your CEO and how your CEO behaves, you'll understand how your organization is behaving. So I think it also got to start from the top, from the board themselves, and then trickle it down to the teams. Lead by example. And more you got to put your teams in a trust and safe environment. And it's going to be even harder now with everything going on, all the tremors in the market, the uncertainties in the market as well. But as leaders, you got to make sure you are also walking with your team members. You understand if an indicator is red, give them the safety and the empowerment to say, I know it's red, but I got a plan. And this is fundamental to AI, because how are you going to do AI? AI is not a crystal ball. AI is not giving you the absolute truth. AI will help you maybe look at, one of the use cases, predictive. We talk about predictive, prescriptive, all this. But you got to give your team the trust to say, this, I'm not totally convinced, because they're going to have to even challenge much more as well. Because AI will give you, and Gen AI, for example, will give you a copywriting, will give you a draft, will give you something. But you got to go and challenge it even more now, because you cannot trust it fully. So it's going to be about critical thinking much more. These are the kind of skills you want to look for: critical thinking, servant leadership, analytical thinking as well. And you want it from the top to the bottom of your organization. And being able to understand that this is not an absolute truth. This is an estimation. It's a sense of direction. But we're going to iterate and we're going to try along the way. But empower your team, trust them, and then work on the general upskilling of the masses to then adopt and use the tools that you're gonna develop.
You're going to receive a lot of CVs. So just one last question before we close the discussion. We were talking talents, attracting talents, retaining them. So retaining, I think you really answered the question. For the attraction of talents, if we focus on the UAE market that we both know pretty well, we know it's quite tense. It's difficult to attract the best talents. Obviously, there are a lot of offers. The competition is very high, and it's difficult to attract them with exciting projects as well, because as you were saying, we still need to put the basics in place in most of the companies, etc. So in your experience in the region, what would you suggest? I know there is no perfect answer, but how can I either attract the best talent or as well enjoy there are a lot of companies that go with offshoring as well, or outsourcing using freelancers for some products only. I don't know if you tested different type of models, if you have a point of view on those.
Yeah, and for the it's a big question. I'll try to break it down into the different parts, but I'll start with the in-house and outsourcing question, because this has always been on the table. The build or buy, or build and buy, or the outsource or in-house or hybrid, a mix of both. And I think what's going to be key is that, as we said earlier, is the speed. So the time to value. So you want to make sure whatever operating model you have in place allows you to deliver as fast as you can, so you can move faster than the competition, because that's going to be a make it or break it. And you want to show the value fast, so you don't, the patience sometimes, unfortunately, is still short. So which model works the best? Do you build or buy? Let's start with there. You build. Do you have a team in house or not? Let's say you're at the beginning of your journey. You don't want to. You still haven't really set up your full team in house, so you go and you buy it off the shelf. You start learning, and not only you as a data team or a tech team, but the whole organization start learning on, okay, we brought this tool, these are the goods, these are the bads, this worked, this didn't work, great. Now you can go and with much more informed decision into starting to building your own tools, or you kind of understand what's your differentiator as well much better. You understand that readiness. Are you ready to build? Are you ready to build this and not this? So then you start internalizing some of the teams, and you start building as well. And then eventually you reach a maturity stage where, depending where you adapt the cursor, it could be a 50-50 build and buy, could be a 50-50 of outsource to in-house. But it's also a journey. We started in Chalhoub, we started the opposite. We did everything in-house because we believe that our people and the assets that we will build in the data team are going to be IP. They're going to be competitive IP. We want to keep that in-house. And then with time, as we matured, we then started to see, okay, maybe it's time now we adapt. We move the cursor and start finding more of a hybrid approach, because at the market, and going back to the UAE market and the GCC, I mean, you see a lot of sometimes volatility as well, right? It's not always there's movement in the market, so you want to make sure you have that resiliency as well, and that you don't disappoint your people, because then going back to the talent wars, you don't want to be that business that hires 1,000 people and fires 1,000 people overnight. That's not good. That's not good for talent. That's not good for your reputation. And that's where you should actually start, really walking the talk about your value, the great place to work, taking care of your people, and showing that you also have exciting projects. So this is where the build and buy comes in. Because if I'm an engineer, I want to do things that matter, and I want to do things that excites me. Really, you got to understand how data or technical profiles work. They want to have impact. They want to do exciting things. They like to do things with their own hands. But if you bring them to then talk with the business and collect requirements, that's not going to be interesting for a technical profile. And if you tell them, oh, I brought this tool, just play around and configure the tool, also that's not interesting for them. So the build and buy also will impact your recruitment and your talent acquisition strategies. When people hear in the market that these guys, they're building everything in-house, or they're building really exciting stuff while having a hybrid approach, you don't have to do everything in-house either, right? Then it will resonate, and people will want a piece of that. But it's not going to be easy depending on which sector you are, because you'll be competing with those digital natives, the tech natives, the startups, which are have the reputation of being super exciting and building their IP in-house because they're tech natives. And if you're not in that sector, then you're competing with those guys. Good luck.
Yeah.
So you really got to show that you know how to buy, you know how to build, you know how to retain, you know how to acquire, and you know what to keep in-house and what to outsource. Because also, if you do everything in-house, even some of the most low quality that you needed to do at the beginning, but eventually with time, there's low added value kind of activities, those can be offshored into cheaper or more competitive, let's say, or efficient kind of markets.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Just one last question before we close. Is there any key takeaway or anything we didn't discuss that you would like to explain to the audience before we end the discussion?
I mean, if I look at it from purely as a data practitioner, I would say take care of your data. Data is a resource. It's a precious resource. I don't want to use those jargons of or the reuse the phrases of data is the new oil or the new gold, but it's an asset. It's a resource, that's for sure, and it's up to you to make it a valuable asset. So take care of it. Take care of the foundations. Take care of how you capture your data, how you take care of your data, how you store your data, how do you manage, use the data, but really the whole value chain. Be careful, take care of it, because otherwise it's going to be very challenging to get any value out of the AI hype and the AI future that's ahead. And it's going to be fundamental. And something we spoke about earlier, maybe to close, the CDO role.
Yeah.
Contrary to the previous CDO, which was the digital officer, which today we don't see anymore.
No.
Right? I mean, I don't see that many of them, the chief digital officers, because they digitalized and they transformed. It was a practice, a way of doing things. But a CDO, and why the CDO should be, I believe, close to the board, if not on the board, is that they manage a resource at the same level as the CFO manages the money and the financials. The HRO manages the people, which are fundamental to any business. Data, I think, is a third or another resource that needs to be managed. And even if it's shared accountability, similar as finance and HR is shared accountability between the HR finance function and the businesses, data should have a shared accountability between a CDO, a data office, or a data team, as well as the business. So take care of your data and take care of your business.
Well noted. Thank you so much, Joseph, for this very insightful discussion. And I wish you the best of luck for your new adventure.
Thank you so much.